What's going on, everyone? My name's Tenebris, and today we're going to talk about raids in Generation Zero. What would a raid mode be like in the game? This is another one of those videos where I throw all caution to the wind and look at what a feature would possibly be like in GZ if there was unlimited developmental access, no restraints or time constraints, and most importantly, an endless budget. These videos are always a little on the hyperbolic side, but open up the floor for a discussion on things that maybe won't fly as far in other venues of the community. And they always give me a chance to low-key request things I'd love to see, but have pretty high doubts will happen in the future of Generation Zero here. So today, we'll talk about what a raid mode would be like, what I think we could raid, and more importantly, where we would raid, and then as well some aside stuff like the possibilities of lore expansion, and most importantly, what sort of fat loot could be offered for raids. If you have any ideas of your own, or if I give you any ideas along the way through this video, please slap them up in the comments below so we can really think tank raids in Generation Zero here. Variety is the spice of life. The better the variety, the better overall a feature will be in a lot of cases, providing depth and overall the reason for us to engage with a certain feature. And this is the approach that we're going to take here with this idea of raids in Generation Zero. The idea of raids will be a blending of a ton of things, and along the way I'll even try to throw in some community requests and kind of mix it all together here to imagine raids as a really feature-complete addition to the game. So first off, before we even get to the raids themselves, we need a method of getting there. And something I've thought about pretty much since Alpine Unrest, it would be pretty dang cool to have our own customizable boat. Something we could use as a means of getting somewhere. But the problem always was, where would a customizable boat even take you? So back then, I kinda shelved the wishlist idea and put it on ice because it felt like a useless request at the time. But if we had off-map locations to visit, that could bring a whole new purpose to this kinda older idea of mine. One big thing I always feel Generation Zero could have more of is our own ways of personalizing things. But to get to that point, we need to have things to personalize in the first place. We started out with our characters, next came base building earlier this year, so where to go from there? The two levels of personalization in the game are very nice, but I think to tie it all together, one more piece of the puzzle needs to be thrown in there. Boats could totally float that void in a big way. Another thing this would give is a good meaty layer of immersion, allowing us to experience a short journey where maybe seaborne machines could come and attack you. The process of sailing to the location you're headed to would be a nice little bit of either relaxing scenery or tense oceanic combat, fighting machines that dive and resurface to attack you and your boat, which then could add a fun bit of purpose to the customization, allowing you to craft a couple levels of reinforcements for your boats to maybe survive longer or more difficult journeys along the way. We're going to go into loot at the end of the video related to your boat, kind of tying it all together with a customizable boat as a pinnacle feature of the whole concept. Again, bringing that variety vibe that GZ does actually genuinely need moving forwards. Now, we've spent enough time talking about this age-old idea of mine, but the raids, let's get to them. What's the point? What's the purpose? And firstly, I think this would be a great and also equally necessary method of the story expanding and growing. We've always wondered about what's going on fully with the outside world as Generation Zero's events are happening, and this could be the method to bringing answers to that question, giving us short plot lines of people surviving or not surviving a new invading menace, which Also, I think would be a good thing for a lot of players that have played for a long time and are seeking some of those old days vibes. This would be an awesome way of reinventing those mysterious old day vibes in a new way in the game, and even better, it could maybe work multiple times over if each raid location were given some sort of unique plot along the way, maybe unique characters with their own mini story arcs. The format of these raids could be a more typical one, where you start at a location and proceed through a corridor-type environment, proceeding to checkpoints of increasing numbers of machines, until you reach the end point where a boss will be waiting for you. But not in your typical sense of a boss, but more in line with what we saw in Phoenix Rising. Because whether you enjoy or don't enjoy Phoenix Rising, you can't disagree that the Phoenix artillery cannon was badass as heck. Ever since then, I've thought that more of these Phoenix megastructures could serve as objectives for us to destroy, and bosses along the way. Not in your typical idea of a boss with some massive health bar or laser beams or any of that jazz, but more like a insurmountable foe that we need to take down with more indirect means. I'm talking Uncle Calbomb 2 The Reckoning, my dudes, where maybe instead it's a plot method or some unique objective for us to complete to defeat the boss of the raid location. And speaking of, I think keeping the locations local to Sweden would be a good call too, further pulling in Scandinavian locations to keep the original atmosphere of Generation Zero intact. I wouldn't want to head somewhere western like America or Canada even, and I don't think heading more inland to Europe would add as much variety to things. But if we focus purely on Scandinavian locations, and one outlier that I think would still fit very well into the mix, we could have a visual buffet from the archipelago of the base game to Black Crag volcanic islands and sweeping green valleys, almost stepping on the toes of the expansive worlds division of Avalanche that make Hunter Call of the Wild, but I'm sure that wouldn't be an issue having two scenic, gorgeous video games in two separate divisions. So for the next little bit, let's go into a handful of locations that are Scandinavian that I kind of think would be really awesome to head to on these expeditions. And as well, we'll show up some maps, some Google Maps of the whole thing, so that way you dudes can kind of visualize the idea that I have in mind for that real-time travel system. Not so much real-time, because you wouldn't want to be waiting days to go to a raid, but, you know, it would be anywhere from, like, 10 to 15 minutes or something like that in terms of real-time travel. I've thought up 6 locations as a reference here, but kinda like how Generation Zero does with Ostertorn, taking locations and loosely naming them based on real-world names, we're going to do the same with these locations here. Each location will be offering their own interesting factors of travel time, opportunities for narratives, and unique particular rewards, either based on the countries the inspiration is taken from, or rewards based on the short plot you engage with during the raid. The first location we'll talk about here is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek nod to what potentially inspired Generation Zero's map in the first place. A Finnish island smack dab in the middle of Finland and Sweden. You can even draw some of the loose names we have for our own locations in-game to locations on this island. The idea of the raid would be heading to Mariehamn, a port city that would provide an awesome seaside backdrop to the raid, fittingly after the short boat ride that you would have to the location. As primarily a place that speaks Swedish, we would encounter locals that are fighting against the machines as they invade by sea, and it wouldn't be super far off some of the things that we experience in the base game itself. The short plot could see you joining up with local fishermen and militia to combat the machines, ending in a battle against machines as they invade a tourist beach kinda like Lilleholmen. The big boss could be a battle against a transport unit that you'd have to enter and place bombs in, and then escape in time. It'd be a spicy location that would bring you through a larger coastal town, kinda like Ostervik in the game, and would maybe be the beginner's raid to get people used to the feature in the first place. You could leave with some slick summer beachwear, get some sort of experimental harpoon launcher, and get some fishing decorations for your boat, all kind of focusing around the marine vibes of Mariehamn. The harpoon launcher would be a kind of uncanny weapon, but it would also be a fun and interesting and, most of all, unique reward for the entire experience, and it would be kind of based off of the technology that works for the experimental PVG, but it would have a single shot function just like the GRG does. Kind of putting it into like this upper part of the meta where it's a high damage dealing piercing weapon, but has a very slow rate of fire as it's only one shot per reload. Now, this is the big thing that what getting away from the base game and its own plot could do for Generation Zero. Give the opportunity for bombastic scenes like machines storming a country via a beachside, or we could swing 100% in the opposite direction. You get to this town and there is word of survivors around, but instead everyone's missing. You get to the beach again after fighting your way there, but this time it's to stop a ship from leaving with a bunch of people in similar pods to what was in the end of the base game's main plot. The freedom to do what would make the most momentum in any given direction is not something we have in our own story here for Generation Zero, whether or not it's with the DLC moving forwards or base game additions either. The build will need to be much slower to get to any points of bombastic scenery, or it will need to really put a halt on things to get back to the mystery that we had in the first place. But what we could get from getting away from the story and getting away from the base game are small moments of intense storytelling alongside the concept of these raids themselves. Now, we're going to go through the rest of the locations a little bit quicker here for the sake of brevity, but again, this is all stuff that you can add to if you get any ideas along the way here in the comments down below. So next up for Stockholm, a location that I personally really want to see in the game. Not just for a huge city to visit or explore, but also for the answers that it would bring to the game. What's going on with mainland Sweden? We could visit Stockholm to aid the military in searching for survivors and find the city itself maybe devastated or something like that, having to actually look for NPCs that are hiding from machines at checkpoints along the way. A fun spin would be keeping the NPCs safe from the machines as the machines try to get at them, kinda like the missions for the Björtenet Hotel. You could walk away afterwards with urban combat fatigues, an experimental AG-5 with an underbarrel grenade launcher, and military camo and ornaments for your boat. Okay, so on to the next location, and I'm not going to be able to say its proper name, but it's a national park in Norway. A rocky and mountainous location where we would maybe team up with local rangers to investigate a large machine that appeared deep in the mountainside. Bringing you through a nighttime with Aurora Borealis, we'd find a huge machine base carved into a cliffside that we'd have to either shut down or destroy. At the end, we could get some cozy traditional Finnish clothing, and maybe the RK-62 as a usable weapon. Now, next up, the Shetland Islands in northern Scotland, and primarily just because I want to get a kilt to wear in the game, I guess I could wear the plaid skirt, but get a proper man's kilt with the leg hair and all that shit, and bagpipes, dude, a bagpipe emote, it needs to happen. No, but for real, I think it would be really interesting to visit the Northern Islands of Scotland, the Shetland Islands, and team up with, like, Scottish local teens and local youth to fight against machines as the machines are, like, invading and taking people, and all of that good Generation Zero jazz. Now, as the Shetland Islands are out in the middle of the North Sea, this obviously would take a lot longer to travel to than somewhere like Stockholm. So this is where the kind of travel times would kind of come into more play. As you'd travel to these further locations, you'd have to go through a longer travel time and potentially have to fight more machines in the ocean along the way. Now, next up, the Faroe Islands, and Alright, a word of honesty here, this is kind of what inspired the idea for this video in the first place. But lately I've been watching this show called Katla, and it's a really good show actually if any of you are looking for a good Scandinavian mystery. But outside of the show itself being good, its setting has really stuck out to me. The black cragged beaches of Iceland, thick with layers of ash everywhere, just built up like snow. It made up for an awesome setting for the show to take place in, and I thought, man, it'd be so sick to fight machines on a volcano island like that. Now, I haven't really thought about it super in depth outside of the thought, man, that would be a really cool setting, but just to kind of spitball some ideas here, could very much meet up with like some volcanic researchers, and there's like some sort of a machine trying to harness geothermal energy in order to benefit Phoenix, because really the power bill for Phoenix, the hydro, it's gotta be through the roof. And so we could go there and journey our way up the volcano mountainside and get to the summit and have to fight like some sort of a giant machine that's slurping up all of that volcano juice like it's some sort of Dorito flavored milkshake. As a reward, we could maybe get some sort of like an experimental chaff grenade or something like that. Something a little bit more utilitarian purposed. And then also we could get like a lava lamp for the boat, because volcano lava lamp? Come on, dude. And for the last location, we could possibly go off to an oil platform just out in the middle of the ocean. I think that this would be really, really cool, especially if it was like the whole oil platform was like somehow transformed into a Phoenix machine itself. It could kind of take the concept of the raid as well as the unique boss battle and slap it all into one single giant raid boss battle kind of thing, where you'd go off and you'd fight this oil platform machine with like rocket salvos on it and machine guns and stuff like that. I think it would be really intense and also a lot of fun. This would also be a great opportunity to explain like how the machines get all this fuel, how they get this gift gas and stuff like that. Maybe they're siphoning it through these oil platforms or something like that. Again, giving a little bit of grounding to the plot and a little bit of an explanation to some of these more mysterious factors of the game in a way that's meaningful and also partially a little bit more out there, just like how Generation Zero is, where it's grounded, but it's also really freaking out there with like AI brain interfaces and all of that sort of crazy stuff. I think that's something we really need here in the game too. Just like a thorough fleshing out of the things we know in the game. Even if a little superfluous or on the nose, any sort of an explanation is better than video game magic. At least to me that is here for Generation Zero. And from the opportunity of explaining the small details like how machines source their energy or fuel, to the bigger picture of the world during GZ's events, I think raids have a ton of potential, spicing up our experience and giving us off-site locations to visit, making Phoenix seem like an even bigger threat than the base game or DLC have let on so far. And even more so, expanding the GZ universe as a whole for future entries if that's the path Systemic Reaction will choose when GZ meets the end of its development eventually. So, I want to pass this on to you dudes now. Do you see what I'm seeing here, or do you think this is maybe not something the team should focus on? Any ideas of your own along the way? Maybe some of mine stuck out to you along the way here. But that's enough poor jokes and wild spitballing on my end. Thank you very much for watching and considering my ideas here, and I'm thinking of dropping a bunch of Generation Zero content over the holidays, so stay tuned for more in the very near future, my dudes. But for now, stay awesome, and I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, peace.